What do you make of what's going on with Kyrie and the Nets, Bomani? What do you think of what's happening there? Your 2 cents.
I think that the Nets, whether we're referring to members of the Nets that wear uniforms or people who work for the Nets that wear suits, I think they thought somewhat reasonably that, all this stuff would go on and all this talk would happen, and then Kyrie would come because, of course he would, right? Basketball season's about to start.
Right.
And then they looked up and realized, wait a minute, no, he's not. And I think that they made the only reasonable decision, which was if you're only going to be here half the time, you can't be here any of the time. What I thought the Nets made a mistake in the beginning was even entertaining the possibility that he could only play half the games. Like, it needed to be said very early, hey, man, either you get this or you're just not going to be able to be around here unless you're just expecting that Kyrie is going to show up on time to all the road games. I would not make that guess. And so for what it's worth, Kyrie seems to believe everything that he's saying, every single bit of it. And if he does legitimately believe it, I don't see this changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I just don't understand what he's saying, though, right? I don't understand what his stance is. And it's not that I mean that there's so many different ways that people use the word understand these days. Like, I understand what his right is, right? But I don't comprehend what he's saying. What is he saying? Like, what is his stance that places one of the best teams in the NBA in jeopardy of having an easier time or a better path towards a championship? Like, what is his stance? I don't get it.
None of it makes sense. Not a single bit of it makes a single bit of sense. I don't understand it. The idea that he would be a voice for the voiceless while not actually using his voice and explaining where he's coming from is a little bit hard for me to understand. I'll be the first to tell you. And I think that's the biggest thing about this. Kendrick Perkins made this point on ESPN, and he was right. He's like, there's just a distinct lack of clarity in everything from him, and the position that he wants to hold requires that you be clear, and he is not clear.
I mean, I think, you and I have probably met a lot of same people or know some people or certainly have been around enough in this business that you run across a bunch of people who like to sound smart because they're concerned if they really are that much of an intellect because they're expected to be. And it's sort of some sort of way that they trip themselves up. Is Kyrie that guy? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, because he's using, phrases and talking in a manner that does sound like it's learned, but it doesn't seem that way to me.
Nah,
Bomani,
Yeah, I don't know if I would say learned is quite the right term.
So what is it? What is it then?
I don't know. I think he sounds confident in what he says,
yes.
And then you get to the end of it, and it just doesn't make any sense. It just simply doesn't add up. Like, it sounds like he is informed is a tricky word to say because I do believe that he is operating off of information that I don't think is probably good information, but
yes.
It's information nonetheless. And so he feels like what he is saying is right, and he stands in it. And honestly, he really doesn't have to explain to me or anybody else why it is that he's doing this. But if you want to act like you're doing this based on something larger, right, then you do have to be able to explain it. And he can't.
It is just, and instead we're hearing an argument about it. It's his right to have this stance. And I'm like, okay, like, I agree, but I'd like to know what the stance is. And
yes.
I don't get it. That's why I'm trying to figure out, like, what is his modus operandi? We
all would love to know this, and he just won't give it to us because I don't think he knows it either.
Calling another man's intellect into question.
I was going to say, we get all the Kyrie stuff out of our system.
No, I just, again, I don't. I kind of, the minute it came out of my mouth, I'm like, what? But we all meet people who are like, does this guy know what he's talking about? Because he sounds really,
confident.
Well, not confident, learned. Sounds like he's got an intellect, and I'm curious as to what he thinks because he's clearly curious, and what he says and how he says it piques my interest. Mm-hmm. And then when you actually try and put together what is he saying, it's just like, what is he saying? I don't know what he is saying. And at some point, you just get tuned out. And the Nets are tuning him out because tuning into him is not to the betterment of their team. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.